The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
There was a news story brought to my attention about a bullet hole found at Bernie Sanders' campaign headquarters in Las Vegas, Nevada, on a day that Bernie Sanders was actually at that particular campaign headquarters. I thought, wow. Huge story. Clearly, this will be reported everywhere, but no, it was only reported, and it continues to essentially be only reported by the Las Vegas Sun. Nobody else has really picked up on the story. So I assumed then, again, wrong to assume, it must not be true, because surely corporate media would be interested in a story where a bullet hole is found at the campaign headquarters of one of the two leading Democratic presidential candidates. No, it doesn't appear to be, because it is untrue. The Las Vegas Sun writes that a bullet hole was indeed discovered in a storefront window at the Bernie Sanders campaign headquarters in Northwest Las Vegas over the weekend or late last week. This is the same day that Bernie Sanders was on site, according to Metro Police. So officers responded just before noon to the campaign office on South Rainbow Boulevard and said it appears as though a bullet went through the window. They declined to comment on whether a shot had been fired. I guess conceivable, Lewis, that somebody threw the bullet through the window.
Is that actually a possibility?
I don't know.
So nobody heard a shot.
Right. I guess what they mean is there's two possibilities, right? Either this is a bullet hole that has been here for a while and it's not linked to any action that recently happened, or somebody recently shot a bullet through the window.
And that would have happened presumably when no one was there, because otherwise there would have been a scene.
And Bernie Sanders did several interviews with a number of media outlets at the office that same day, including with the Las Vegas Sun. And then just a couple days ago, the Sanders campaign, or yesterday in fact, called the bullet, quote, an issue of serious concern, but they did not elaborate on the specifics of the situation. Why is this not being more widely reported? I mean, if there was a bullet hole found at Trump campaign headquarters in New Hampshire, corporate media would absolutely be all over that. Why is this not a story? Because it's Bernie.
I don't know. I think that maybe it's just not a story because there's not much in terms of sensationalism here. I mean, nobody heard the shot.
Right.
Nobody saw anything. Who knows how long it's been there? Maybe it is kind of dull. I mean, I think it's still worth reporting on, though.
Do you think it's likely that if the bullet hole was noticed, don't you think it's likely that at some point during the entire time Bernie has had a headquarters in Las Vegas, somebody would have already noticed it? So this idea that the bullet hole may have been there for months already, maybe even before they moved in. Unlikely. It sounds hard to believe to me.
That does seem unlikely. At the same time, there's a lot of stuff like this that happens in Las Vegas, right? I mean, there's a lot of violence, a lot of gun violence.
Stray bullets?
Stray bullets, sure. I don't know how many stray bullets there are on any given day. But is this out of the ordinary for Las Vegas?
That I don't know. But certainly it's out of the ordinary for a presidential campaign. And it's even more bizarre that it has received essentially no media coverage on corporate media, full stop. Very interesting story involving cartoons of Muhammad. Two Israeli cartoonists had their drawings censored at a Tel Aviv exhibit that was meant to commemorate last year's terrorist attack on the Paris offices of the satirical French magazine Charlie Hebdo. The works were allegedly censored after the French embassy expressed some concern over their portrayal of the Prophet Muhammad. And the two caricaturists involved are Vladek Sandler and Roy Friedler. They submitted these cartoons to the exhibition, which is a tribute to the 11 people, which included 5 cartoonists who were murdered in the attacks in Paris on January 7th, 2015. It's been about a year. The exhibit opened. It runs throughout January at the French Institute in central Tel Aviv. And Sandler's picture, which portrayed Muhammad as a nude model for the 5 murdered cartoonists, was removed from the exhibit altogether. Meanwhile, there was a sticker placed over an image of Muhammad in Friedler's picture of the cartoonists going up to heaven. In a Facebook post on Saturday, Sandler wrote, quote, I sent 2 caricatures to the exhibit, and both of them touched in one way or another on the fact that since the attack, Mohammed is not being drawn in the newspaper. To my great surprise, when I arrived at the opening event of the exhibit, I discovered that after a special request from the French embassy, one of my caricatures had been removed. So what does the French Institute say about these cartoons in question? French Institute spokeswoman Anne Gaulion said, quote, "To the best of my knowledge, no caricature was removed from the wall. Due to small amount of space to hang the works, we were forced to pick one of 2 works that the artists submitted, and therefore not all of the works of the illustrators and caricaturists that were submitted were presented. There was no political interference or pressure placed on us by the French embassy." Okay, so that may be the story with regard to the removal, but not with regard to a sticker being placed over Muhammad within one cartoon. If true, doesn't this sort of defeat the entire purpose of such an exhibit?
Well, I think that it's somewhat clear that Tel Aviv and the people maybe hosting the event were not as worried as the people at the French embassy in general.
So it would seem.
So I think maybe, maybe they're just afraid that some type of attack would come down on the French embassy instead of where this event was being held or something like that. I mean, I can understand being worried about that.
So can I. I mean, I'm trying to sort of think it through from a few perspectives. If you're a family member of someone who was murdered over a Muhammad cartoon, and then at a tribute to that family member, the cartoons are censored, how does that make you feel? Does it make you feel as though the terrorists have won in a certain way? Or do you say, hey, you know what? I'm glad they have an event for my loved one who is now deceased. The last thing I want is political statements that are possibly going to bring negative attention or maybe even further attacks. But then the counter to that is, hey, not censoring Muhammad is not a political statement. It should just be something that can be done, drawing Muhammad. So you can sort of go back and forth. And then you're getting at the concerns in terms of security from the venue. If they don't censor it and there's an attack, all of a sudden, all hell breaks loose. There's likely retaliations. Everybody who is involved in the retaliations is the bad guy. If they censor it, then people are upset that they're censoring free speech. What's the right answer? Don't have the exhibit? I mean, that seems totally counterproductive.
Yeah, I think what would the cartoonists who were killed want? I think they would probably want uncensored images of Muhammad. So if it's about respecting them, paying tribute to them, I think the answer is clear.
I think that we have to consider the pragmatic realities when we do things like this, but at the same time, we can't fall into these anti-progressive, anti-free speech traps here. The Muhammad cartoons have a very important meaning within the entire Charlie Hebdo tragedy. And to say we are going to remember this with censorship of Muhammad cartoons, it does not feel right. I guess that's the bottom line. It's one of those things where when I think about it, it doesn't feel right, although I can articulate seemingly logical arguments for or against.
Yes, maybe it's easy for us to say when we are not necessarily in the line of fire. It's a tough decision, and it's one that I hope I don't have to make.
The U.S. state of Arizona is known for passing some pretty bad laws and proposals of really bad bills, notably, of course, SB 1061, the Show Me Your Papers bill with regard to undocumented immigrants in the state. I have just been made aware of Senate Bill 1054, which was introduced by Arizona State Senator John Kavanaugh late last week. If passed, it would make it illegal to make a video recording of law enforcement activity within 20 feet without the officer's permission. In public, right? In public. So you might say, okay, well, David, 20 feet, you need to stay out of the way. You can be out of the way and within 20 feet, or you could be further than 20 feet away and still in the way. And we've talked about this before. You can say you may not interfere with police activity or investigations, period. And that covers it, right? If you are recording and interfering, doesn't matter how far away you are, that's not allowed. So I think that the 20 feet thing is sort of a bit of a distraction. Cops show up. The other real bad part about this is the permission, right? Cops show up. You feel they are, I don't know, unfairly questioning your friend. You want to record it. you have to ask them permission. Now, that doesn't work. I mean, this is completely anti-free speech. And then we say, well, okay, at least this is all just in public, right? In the privacy of your own home, you could do whatever you want. Wrong. The bill would also authorize police officers to order occupants of private property to stop recording if they believe the recording interferes with law enforcement activity or is unsafe. How that is defined, I don't know. Hopefully this will not pass, Lewis. A real abortion of a proposal, though.
I don't like it at all. It's not too surprising that this is coming to us from Arizona. It seems like lawmakers in Arizona seem to be on the side of the police and law enforcement, on just about every issue. And so somehow the police departments have successfully lobbied for this to happen.
And I get it. I mean, I'm not one of these anti-cop people, Lewis, on the left or on the right. They exist on the left and right for different reasons and in different ways. I've seen the videos of how quickly an attacker with a knife can close a 15-foot gap with a police officer. And we need to take measures to protect police officers. They are doing a dangerous job. Police officers, mostly good guys and gals with guns, they need to be protected. I get that. But this is going too far in stifling one of the few tools the average person has to document police misbehaving. If we had a ton of tools, right, where people had any number of effective methods at documenting and reporting and seeking justice for bad behavior by police, maybe this wouldn't strike me as so dangerous. But this is one of the key tools people have to document police activity.
I don't really see this as a protection issue, because by not being allowed to film, what are you really protecting them from? You're, I guess, protecting them from the repercussions of something shady that they may be doing. So if you want to talk about protecting them physically, preventing police deaths, preventing whatever, fine. This does not protect police in any way that they need to be protected.
And I even think we can separate the 20 feet away and the permission part, because the staying out of the way makes sense, and you can word it as your filming can't interfere with what police are doing. But a blanket, you need permission to film police activity, is troubling. Imagine you're filming undercover police activity without knowing it, or any other such number of hypotheticals. This is a very dangerous law. I am resting on the idea that this is not going to pass, although crazier things have happened in Arizona.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I hope you're right.
Let's take a break. I will remind you that the show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. I am on Twitter at dpakman. And Lewis is on Twitter at Louis Motamedi, which, by the way, is spelled LOUISMOTAMEDI. Often questions about that. That's where Lewis is on Twitter. We will take a break and be back with plenty more on this Tuesday.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
This program, unlike many other shows, is not funded by big corporations. It is not funded by big media conglomerates. It is funded by the audience. And there's a couple of ways you can help. Number one, my advice is become a David Pakman Show member. You can sign up at davidpakman.com/membership. You get instant access to the bonus show hosted by producer Lewis, where I am the sidekick. You get instant access to the archive of shows dating all the way back to 2005 and the commercial-free audio and video streams of the show. It's fantastic. Andy Hudak is today's new member of the day. He is getting all the member benefits, and you can join Andy at davidpakman.com/membership. In addition to that, if you ever shop on Amazon.com, you can go to davidpakman.com/Amazon. It'll take you to the Amazon website. Any shopping you do will send a little kickback to our show. And third, and I don't want to understate the importance of this, Lewis, I really want clarity this evening, you can also go to davidpakman.com/gear and purchase David Pakman Show gear, including bumper stickers, t-shirts, sweatshirts like the one producer Lewis is wearing today, and what we like to call the camel color. That is what we see Lewis wearing over there. davidpakman.com/gear is the place to make it happen. I am thrilled to announce the return of Morality with Motamedi. We've been previewing this for a while on our YouTube channel. Morality with Motamedi is an old segment on the show where people would write in and propose ethical dilemmas to Lewis, and then we would sort of get insight into Lewis's moral compass via his answers to these questions. It is back. You can check out some of the old clips on YouTube. Now, before we get into this week's first inaugural 2016 Morality with Motamedi, a few notes. Number one, we would love to have a musical introduction of sorts to Morality with Motamedi, the way we do with Hatred Mail. We don't yet have one. If you have something you want to put together, please send it in. We would absolutely love it. And it would be great to start taking submissions for Morality with Motamedi graphics. The only requirement is that they be in 1920 by 1080 resolution. Send in the ideas, Lewis, and we're really going to bolster the production value of Morality with Motamedi with the help of the audience, I presume.
I presume as well. Yeah, we've had plenty of great submissions, art, music, you name it, from audience members. And so same should apply here. Send it in.
Absolutely. Let's get right into the first 2016 Morality with Motamedi. Where is Lewis's moral compass today? We will find out. Here's the scenario. Two drunk drivers driving two separate cars. One hits and kills a pedestrian in a crosswalk. The other doesn't because the pedestrian happens to jump out of the way. Do they deserve different punishments or the same, given that the repercussions of their drunk driving were different only by mere chance that one pedestrian was able to jump out of the way? Lewis, I turn it over to you. Let's explore.
I think what we need to have here is a very strict penalty that would be identical for both drivers.
Really?
Yes. Because that's what you have to do if you want to combat drunk driving, right? If you look at the places in the world where we have the fewest drunk driving accidents and the lowest, the lowest rates of drunk driving generally, they are the countries that have the strictest and sometimes zero tolerance policies for alcohol and driving.
But you're going more in the direction of the how to prevent drunk driving, whereas the question is about the morals of punishing someone who drove drunk and hit someone in the exact same way as someone who drove drunk and by chance did not hit anybody.
Elaborate on that then.
All right.
It could have easily just as been just as bad for the driver where the pedestrian happened to jump out of the way, right? The behavior on the part of the driver was exactly the same.
Absolutely.
And so I think they could have done just as much damage. And so it's just as reckless. It's just as crazy. So we need to have the same punishment.
However, I think by counterexample, you could see how this could get us down a complicated path. Imagine a gunman, for example, who goes out there and he shoots 3 bullets. Okay? 3 rounds are fired by the gun in public. 1 round hits someone in the head and kills them. The other 2 rounds, by mere chance, miss hitting other people. Should the punishment for that be the same as if the 3 rounds had by chance killed 3 people? Would you go after them for the exact, would you ask for the exact same punishment? Because, hey, it was only by chance that the action of shooting 3 bullets vis-a-vis the action of driving drunk through a crosswalk had one set of repercussions versus another.
I think it's a little bit different.
Why?
Well, what would happen in the case right now, what would happen in the case of that shooter is that they would be charged with murder, and then there would be 2 charges of maybe attempted murder.
Well, not if it wasn't a specific person they were trying to hit, maybe reckless endangerment or something related to a gun charge, whatever.
If they were aiming for those people or whatever. Okay.
Right.
But they knew what they were doing, and they were trying to achieve or accomplish something, presumably, and they partially succeeded. They failed in the other cases. But when you're drunk driving, I think in the case of the 2 drivers we were talking about, is there any motive or plan at all? Or is it just someone who gets in a car and exercises poor judgment in doing so?
Well, now you're getting into one of the key issues here, right? Which is when we're talking about criminality and crime, we're at some point going to discuss intent, right? Which is why if you don't successfully set off a bomb that potentially could have killed many people, that is a very deliberate act. You made a bomb or you obtained a bomb. You went and you had every intention of killing many, many people. We could say that that level of intent is very different than the absolute criminally gross negligent act of drunk driving. But it is different. Thus, when the intent is not to go out there and kill someone, should we evaluate the repercussions differently based on the level of intent or negligence?
Yeah. Well, that's the question. And
your ruling remains, though.
Yes, that we have the same penalty for both drivers. That's my moral ruling.
All right. That is Lewis's decision on the first 2016 edition of Morality with Motamedi. 2 drunk drivers, same punishment, whether they hit or don't hit that pedestrian. Now, the third scenario is, what if there's not even any pedestrians around and it's 3 a.m. and they fly through that crosswalk and nobody's there at all? If we can't associate a near miss to it, should there still be the same punishment?
I think yes, there should be,
All
especially
right.
for my original moral ruling to be consistent. I think yes, same would apply.
Send me your thoughts on this one. Send in ideas for Morality with Motamedi. We will do one of these. I think it's going to be every other Tuesday for the time being, and that's what it is. Morality with Motamedi is back. There's a very serious heroin epidemic in New England right now, including a serious problem here in Boston, Massachusetts. Maine is also suffering from this problem. And during a town hall meeting in Bridgeton, Maine, Republican Governor Paul LePage went racist when talking about the heroin problem. LePage was asked how he plans to address the state's heroin epidemic, and in explaining how he would increase enforcement of existing laws and so on and so forth, he started talking about drug dealers with names like, I don't know, D-Money and Shifty selling heroin and impregnating white women when they are in town. Let's take a look at the video of the Republican governor from Maine.
People that take drugs, these are guys that are named D-Money, Smoothie, Shifty, these type of guys that come from Connecticut, New York. They come up here, they sell their heroin, then they go back home. Incidentally, half the time they impregnate a young white girl before they leave, which is a real sad thing, because then we have another issue that we got to deal with down the road.
Right. So there's a movement out there, Lewis, that hates calling anything racist, saying that isn't racist, saying this isn't racist, and it might even be true. And sometimes they say, oh, anyone who thinks they see racism is actually racist. The governor's office provided a comment to the Portland Press Herald, which responded to the mark, saying the governor is not making comments about race. Race is irrelevant. Let's think about that. The governor said the drug dealers come in and impregnate a white girl. Who brought up race in this entire thing, Lewis?
Well, it was the governor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If race is irrelevant, why is the governor talking about white girls getting impregnated and not just girls? Heroin and this narrative are also particularly interesting because heroin addicts, particularly in the Northeast, are mostly white. So imagine the scenario that people like LePage like to put together. With some drugs, like crack cocaine, the focus has often been on the non-white drug user of crack cocaine. Now that we have a white addiction problem with heroin, the problem is the non-white people bringing in the drugs and sleeping with the white women. It's always about the non-white people somehow.
It's pretty amazing. I think we have someone here who has a fundamental misunderstanding of the heroin problem overall.
Right.
And clearly has just fallen into this trap of drug dealing stereotypes.
Is there anything to him saying it's not about race when he talked about white girls being impregnated? And by the way, if you're talking about white on white sex, there would be no reason to stipulate that the impregnated women are white. That's only relevant in contrast to the race of the impregnators.
Yeah, I'm not sure what planet this guy lives on. It's clear how he thinks, and I don't know who voted for this guy. Are they having buyer's remorse? I hope so.
I would like to talk to some of those Maine residents. Okay, let's take a break. Make sure to give us a like on Facebook at facebook.com/David Pakman Show. On the way to 50,000 Facebook likes, part 2 of our examination of claims made by Reza Aslan after the break.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
And now the conclusion to our investigative piece about Reza Aslan, part 1 on yesterday's show. Part 2 today. We will continue where we left off yesterday. Aslan is very quick to come to the defense of injustices in the world, despite how little ground he may have to do so.
For the most part, it is not a free and open society for women in those states.
Well, it's not in Iran, it's not in Saudi Arabia, it certainly is in Indonesia and Malaysia, it certainly is in Bangladesh.
Bangladesh and Malaysia are, quote, free and open societies for women. Bangladesh is known for its Islamic vigilantism against women. And in Malaysia, Islamic Sharia courts notoriously treat women unfairly, not giving them full parental rights and not regarding their testimonies to be as trustworthy as men's. Malaysian courts require women to obey their husbands, and men are entitled to women's inheritance because it is mandated by Islamic scripture. And by the way, 93% of Muslim females in Indonesia are victims of female genital mutilation. Aslan has said that in Indonesia, the world's largest Muslim nation, that, quote, women are absolutely 100% equal to men. According to the U.S. State Department's Human Rights Report, Indonesian migrant women have disproportionately been victims of arbitrary strip searches and theft by police. Unmarried women are not given proper access to contraceptives. And the legal definition of rape is extremely narrow. Islamic Sharia courts in Indonesia regularly drop charges on rape suspects if they take an Islamic oath of innocence. And by the way, 98% of Muslim females in Indonesia are victims of female genital mutilation. Another example of Aslan baselessly defending Islam is in the instance of ISIS and their young female sex slaves. Aslan has tried to distance ISIS from the rest of Islam by claiming that the Quran forbids slavery and that one of the first things Muhammad did was, quote, free the slaves. Nowhere in the Quran is slavery forbidden. There are actually specific verses in the Quran that discuss how to treat one's slaves. As a religious scholar, Aslan also isn't telling you that in the Quran, Allah gave sex slaves to Muhammad. Muhammad also brought slaves and enslaved infidels. The, quote, freed slaves that Aslan referred to were the Muslims who were freed in the Quran, while the non-Muslims stayed enslaved. Over the years, both Israel and Hamas, in their ongoing conflicts, have been accused of using human shields. This is the act of having a military position in a populated area or in a structure full of civilians in an attempt to avoid an attack on that area by the enemy. It is irrefutable that Hamas did this during the summer 2014 unrest between Israel and Gaza. Reza Aslan has denied that Palestinians were doing this during that time.
85% of them civilians. Hundreds of children are being killed every day with American
because
weapons
they're putting them in
paid
front
for.
of them.
That is nonsense.
That is not nonsense. That's the absolute
You know what? You could say this all day.
These are terrorists who have a two-front war going on against Israel and their own people.
But there are many examples of this. The idea that any serious scholar of religion and Judaism and Islam and the Middle East could deny this is bewildering. Here are rockets in Gaza being fired next to a UN building and a hotel full of guests in the middle of a residential Gaza neighborhood.
Enclave 80% of Gaza. Hello?
Gallagher,
Okay.
are you all right?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm back in
what
front of
happened?
the camera.
What
Yeah,
happened?
I'm fine. This was a rocket. This was a rocket. Rockets were just shot right next to where we're standing.
Numerous international reporters witnessed Hamas's use of human shields firsthand during the conflict, and Hamas tried to intimidate many of them into not documenting it, which in part did work. And Aslan has tried to mislead people the same way about the same things. Amnesty International, the organization that Aslan cited on Bill Maher's program while making this claim, is notoriously anti-Israeli. And even they have since acknowledged the use of human shields by Palestinians in Gaza during that time. Here is video of the same launch site during the day. The UN building and children playing can be seen.
This right here is a launching pad for rockets used by Palestinian militants. Now, this type of setup is at the heart of the debate within the international community, but also between Israel and the Palestinian militants. The Israeli army has repeatedly accused Palestinian militants of shooting from within densely populated civilian areas, and that is precisely the type of setup we have right here.
Hamas also has admitted to it and condoned it several times, acknowledging that they have instructed civilians to become human shields.
قبل ساعتين من الآن ب3 صواريخ مصيبة طائرات الاستطلاع الصهيوني، يعني خطوة جريئة قامت بها المواطنين بالتجمع أو بالتجمهر أو الاعتلاء أسطح سطح هذا المنزل، يعني لمنع طائرات الاحتلال.
أن يتعرض الناس وأن يواجهوا الطيران العسكري الإسرائيلي بصدور عارية ليحموا بيوتهم. أعتقد أن هذه سياسة أثبتت نجاعتها، ونحن في الحركة ندعو شعبنا إلى اعتماد هذه السياسة.
During the conflict that summer, 70% of Palestinian casualties were civilians, including 500 children, according to Palestinian and United Nations reports. Aslan uses ad hominem attacks against people he criticizes and against those who criticize him.
Well, I like Bill Maher. I've been on his show a bunch of times. He's a comedian, but frankly, when it comes to the topic of religion, he's not very sophisticated in the way that he thinks.
I actually travel through the Muslim world. I understand the conversations that are taking place. So I feel like, in a sense, I'm in a better position to sort of make judgments.
To be Christian. By the way, that's because Sam Harris's research methodology is the television. Okay? That's Sam Harris's research methodology. This is not an expert on religion. This is not a man who has done a day of field work. He speaks no biblical or Quranic languages. He's done absolutely no research whatsoever in the history of religions.
Sam Harris, who Aslan frequently criticizes, is a neuroscientist with a background in philosophy who has actually done extensive religious research and field work. And Aslan often resorts to calling people bigots as a counter-argument. Accusing people of racism and bigotry are very effective ways of discrediting them and shutting down debate.
The justice system in Muslim countries, you don't think, is somehow more primitive or subjugates women more than in other countries?
Did you hear what you just said? You said in Muslim countries.
Okay.
This is the problem, is that these kinds of conversations that we're having aren't really being had in any kind of legitimate way. We're not talking about women in the Muslim world. We're using 2 or 3 examples to justify a generalization. That's actually the definition of bigotry.
All right. This is at the core of what makes Reza Aslan probably dangerous in discussions about Islam, terrorism, and human rights in Muslim countries. He aggressively helps to enforce an overbearing political correctness among intellectuals, politicians, and media about Islam, which makes it nearly impossible to criticize certain strands of bad ideas in the world without being labeled an Islamophobe. Some on the so-called left don't appreciate the pervasiveness of fundamentalism in the mainstream Muslim world, and thus they underestimate the importance of these issues and the way they're discussed. According to a 2013 Pew poll, 86% of the world's Muslims believe that wives should obey their husbands. 86%. 68% of the world's Muslims believe that governments should abide by Islamic Sharia law. 46%, almost half, advocate death for adultery, and 36% believe in death for leaving Islam. These are huge numbers. It's Aslan's particular brand of oversensitivity about Islam that has made it somehow distasteful to condemn these ways of thinking, has made it outrageous to say publicly that jihadists are our enemies, or that ISIS is a Muslim group, be it based on their own understanding of Islam.
A Muslim is whoever says he's a Muslim.
All true bigotry and racism must be condemned. People, Muslims, should not be hated. But in a post-Enlightenment world, any idea itself should be subject to criticism. Reza Aslan's tactics, if not critiqued, could produce a world where everyone is afraid of being labeled an Islamophobe for criticizing injustice inspired by the doctrines of Islam. Progressives are rightfully focused on the undeniable history of oppression by the U.S. in the Middle East, but this causes many of them to overlook many truly deplorable things that have happened in the name of Islam and that happen in the name of Islam. Things that are not aligned with liberal principles like fundamentalism, totalitarianism, violence, sexism, and homophobia. Is the point that Reza Aslan is a bad person? No, most people are good. Is the point that he's deliberately distorting facts to paint a particular picture that isn't supported in reality? Difficult to say whether someone makes claims out of a desire to distort or out of lack of knowledge. What's clear is that when considering the role and reality of Islam in the world today, Reza Aslan has made claims that are not based in fact. And as progressives, remaining based in fact must be a top priority. The entire piece on Reza Aslan available on our YouTube channel. Check it out. We've already received nearly 1,000 comments about this video. More to come.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Last week, we talked about Donald Trump, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's first ad, his first TV ad. It focused on immigration. It was crazy. We'll review it now. Remember the moment during which they are talking about immigrants coming over from the southern border of the United States. But on video, they actually show video of Moroccan immigrants. Let's take a look at this, just to remind you.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
The politicians can pretend it's something else, but Donald Trump calls it radical Islamic terrorism. That's why he's calling for a temporary shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until we can figure out what's going on. He'll quickly cut the head off ISIS and take their oil. And he'll stop illegal immigration by building a wall on our southern border that Mexico will pay for.
Yeah.
We will make America great again.
Yeah. So the crazy thing was, as I told you, he presents video of the Moroccan border while talking about uncontrolled, undocumented, illegal immigration from Mexico. It's stupid and it's crazy and it's inaccurate. Fine. But I had the opportunity, the privilege, I would call it, to watch Ted Cruz's first ad on immigration, and it eclipses Donald Trump's ad on immigration. It is far more insane. Let's take a look and listen to the Ted Cruz immigration ad now.
I understand that when the mainstream media covers immigration, it doesn't often see it as an economic issue. But I can tell you, it is a very personal economic issue.
Right, my dad came.
And I will say the politics of it would be very, very different if a bunch of lawyers or bankers were crossing the Rio Grande. Or if a bunch of people with journalism degrees were coming over and driving down the wages in the press. Then we would see stories about the economic calamity that is befalling our nation. If I'm elected president, we will triple the Border Patrol. We will build a wall that works. We will secure the border.
Yeah. The ad
I'm
looks
Ted
like
Cruz,
a pair. Oh, I'm stepped all over. He does approve this message. I talked over him saying that. The ad looks like it looks like a satirical ad. There are men and women in suits running across what is presumably the river between the U.S. and Mexico. And what he's saying is just wrong. When he says, if people of high skill were coming over here and taking our jobs, look at the number of people coming from non-Spanish speaking countries being hired for high degree, white collar jobs, whatever. They're coming from all over the place. We've talked about how we're falling behind in science and math and so many other things, in part because of the educational policies that people like Ted Cruz promote. That is happening. And no, people still are only focused on supposed Mexican immigration. He's just wrong on every level here, Lewis.
Well, is he being deliberately misleading, or does he not know what he's talking about, or are they just picking an issue or generalizing because it resonates with his base.
I have no idea. It's again, is it ignorance or is it being dishonest? I don't know. And think about Ted Cruz's own story. Ted Cruz's dad migrated to the U.S. from Cuba. Republicans, by and large, were supporters of the Cuban embargo, and if it were up to them, Rafael Cruz would never have come to the United States in the first place.
Yeah, I'll say this though. This ad has great production value,
right?
And it's like watching a little movie. It's fantastic.
Let's say that he does deport all undocumented immigrants as he's proposing. Are the companies that employ them suddenly going to go and hire Americans at minimum wage, on the record, paying taxes? Maybe Ted Cruz would like to believe that that's going to happen, but I would ask him what planet he's living on if that's what he believes. Of course they're not going to do that. Go after the employers, hit them with heavy fines and possible jail time, and watch as the desire to come to the U.S. illegally to work subsides. And we're going to be talking about this and debunking. We've got a great video we're working on right now. Lewis was doing some work on it this morning. It's going to be similar to our Reza Aslan clip, but it is going to look at the talking points on undocumented immigration. We're going to blow this nonsense out of the water, Lewis, because it's just garbage.
We will. And I think he is resonating with people, though. And you know what would resonate with me would be if Donald Trump and other candidates, instead of talking about, they're taking our jobs, how about the jobs the manufacturing jobs and other jobs that we send to Mexico?
Absolutely.
How many of those would we have if we just brought that all back here? And what would that do for the economy? I think that's a bit more important.
Fantasy world that Cruz and Trump and all of them are living in, and we're going to expose it in the next few weeks. Ben Carson's last visit last week to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, will likely be burned into the memory of one fifth grader who, at Ben Carson's request, was identified as the, quote, worst student in the class in front of a crowd of hundreds of people. Carson was trying to make some kind of self-deprecating joke about his own ineptitude in elementary school. And he said, as a fifth grade student, I was a horrible student. Anybody here in fifth grade? Who's the worst student? And more than 6 students turned and pointed at one particular kid, according to the Des Moines Register. The entire room erupted in laughter, and Carson sort of tried to recover, saying, if you had asked that question in my classroom, there would have been no doubt about who it was, I guess implying that it would have been him. So a self-deprecating joke was reportedly at the root of this completely failed attempt at humor. But this is absolutely horrible. The worst student in the class likely knows that they're one of the worst, and that's someone who is probably at risk of dropping out of high school just a few years later. And by doing this, you're going to further stigmatize not getting good grades. You're likely going to make the situation way worse for this kid. Totally boneheaded joke or attempt at some kind of humor by Ben Carson. I mean, he really could have traumatized this kid.
Maybe. I could envision it going both ways, though. Let's say his confusing message actually got through to this kid. Maybe
Which is,
it would be
you two can have
inspirational.
bad grades now, but eventually become a neurosurgeon.
Well, I guess that's the message. I just, maybe not the best way to go about it.
Yeah.
You could just tell the class that you were a horrible student and leave it at that. But maybe, just maybe.
After the rally, Carson reportedly met with the student and said he hopes that the student will become a neurosurgeon. Why on earth would Carson suggest the kid become his profession? I mean, what if the kid doesn't have the interest or aptitude to become a neurosurgeon, but he tries and flunks out, all because Carson said, I hope you become a neurosurgeon? I question whether Ben Carson has any common sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I don't know. He might just have really great book smarts and fail everywhere else. I've met people like that. Plenty of people.
One of his favorite books, of course, is the Bible.
I don't think that's a common sense book, if you ask me.
Ben Carson, what do you think about this? Could he have? I think certainly he could have scarred this kid for life. Just very weird, irrelevant increasingly, because Carson has no shot and he'll be dropping out of the race sooner than later, if you ask me. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Call anytime. Take a listen to this latest voicemail.
I have a coworker that was telling me that liberals are socialists and progressives are communists.
Right.
And he even told me that Hillary Clinton is a communist. And so, is that true? And he also said that liberals stopped using the term progressive because it really means communist. And I know I've asked you this question before, so if you can please address this question on your show, that would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I say something here?
Please, I don't know what to say.
The first thing you should do before you even respond or do anything, you should ask him what a communist is.
Right.
Say, please define communism. And I have a feeling that this person may not be able to do that.
And secondly, ask which of Hillary Clinton's policy ideas are communist ideas? That's the next question.
Yes.
No, liberalism is not communism. Progressivism is not Marxism or whatever else it was. People's brains are being rotted out there, Louis. It is very, very scary because these talking points are circulating and they make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, Hillary Clinton is one of the farthest things from a communist I can imagine.
Absolutely.
So I don't know where this person is getting their stuff. Maybe from Rush Limbaugh. I don't know.
On the bonus show today, we will talk about No Pants Subway Day. We will talk about who the highest grossing actor of all time is, and we will talk about a very interesting implantable shock absorber for your needs. All of those stories and more, davidpakman.com/membership. Sign up for that bonus show. It's the best.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.